Good afternoon to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to today's tropical weather outlook for Monday, June 8th, 2026. Today, we now have double tropical storms in the Pacific, Boris and Cristina, both of which formed today, and both of which are threatening land right now. Quite an unusual feat for the Eastern Pacific in early June, and definitely speaks to the quite active Pacific season that is definitely looking like it is beginning to unfold right before our eyes here. So we have a lot to go over in the Pacific, and obviously we're going to talk about the Atlantic as well as what is now Cristina. It was 92E before. Definitely has potential for implications on the Gulf later this week, and we've been following that for the past week or two now, and the chance is still there that later this week, once these Pacific tropical storms move in, some of that energy might emerge over the Gulf, and we will have to watch it. So a lot to go over in today's video. Glad to have you along. Let's get started by taking a look at the National Hurricane Center Bulletin. Nothing much happening in the Atlantic right now, but quite a bit happening here in the Pacific. We have dual tropical storms right now. Tropical storm Boris, maximum sustained winds at 45 miles per hour. And tropical storm Cristina, also maximum sustained winds at 45 miles per hour right now. So two tropical storms active at once in the Pacific. And taking a look at the summary here for the Pacific hurricane season, already by June 8th, we have three named storms down, with obviously the strongest storm right now being Boris. And the first storm of the season here just formed last week on June 2nd, Amanda here. And we quite literally just got done with Amanda today. So again, quite an active start to the season here in the Eastern Pacific for sure. And as I'll show you towards the end, it's probably only going to get even more active from here on out. Here's a satellite picture of both Boris and Cristina right now. Luckily, both of these storms are kind of weak and disheveled somewhat right now. They're not really going to do much intensity-wise, although they are, surprising us a little bit with their intensities. I'll show you in a little bit. Chances are likely both of them are even stronger than what the National Hurricane Center has right now, but not much intensification is really expected, or any further intensification really expected here over the next several days, at least with Boris. Boris is going to move inland either tonight or early tomorrow morning at latest, and then it's going to bring lots of rainfall here for Mexico. Cristina will have a little bit or a little bit time over water, a little bit more than Boris here, and so maybe we might see some more intensification from Cristina, but the end result will still be landfall in about 2 or 3 days or so, and with that, and probably during that time period, lots of heavy rainfall over the Central American continent and along the Central American coastline. Of course, the same with Boris, and some of that rainfall is already getting started. But here's the ASCAT pass for Boris, and this actually shocked a little bit of people because the latest ASCAT pass and by the way, if you are unsure what ASCAT means, it's basically, as you see here, a satellite shot showing the estimated satellite wind speeds or wind bars here associated with the system. And you can see, well, one thing is that Boris definitely kind of has an elongated low here, so not a very organized system, as you can see here on satellite. It's obviously very obvious to the eye that we have quite scattered convection here. We're not looking at a very organized system here, but the latest ASCAT pass found a purple bar here, and on that scale, that is a wind bar of 40 knots, meaning 45 miles per hour. But given the fact that this is likely undersampling, I've seen a lot of people suggest that there's even potential that Boris here may already be up to 50 miles per hour. And then taking a look at the ASCAT for Cristina as well, there's probably much more of a potential suggestion that Cristina may already be up to beyond 40 knots as well, because there are quite a few 40-knot bars here associated with the storm. And really quickly going back to the satellite picture here, with both Boris and Cristina, they have quite the deep convection, and especially when you have persistent deep convection like we've been seeing with both of these storms today. Sure, it's disorganized, and there's definitely shear that's affecting these storms, but they have quite persistent deep convection, and that definitely helps rack up the wind speed here. So I would not be shocked if Boris makes it to maybe 50 or even 60 miles per hour before it heads inland tonight. And Cristina might get even a little bit stronger than that. And who knows? I mentioned before, and I'll actually show you again a little bit the sea surface temperatures here. I mean, specifically the anomalies, but even the raw sea surface temperatures as well in this region of the Pacific, easily at 30 to 31 degrees Celsius. In terms of the raw temperatures, the anomalies are well above normal. It honestly wouldn't shock me if Cristina tries a little bit more to intensify and maybe can make a run for hurricane status over the next few days here before it moves inland over Central America. And I say that especially about Cristina because it will have a little bit more time over water than Boris here. But once again, Boris expected to very quickly move inland here. In fact, surprisingly, it was actually expected to move inland by this time already. By this afternoon, Boris should have already been on land over Mexico, but the latest advisory from the National Hurricane Center, they actually say it here. The center of Boris is farther south than previously estimated, now expected to make landfall on Tuesday. So roughly several more hours, maybe 12 to 18 more hours here of time that this is going to be over water. Maybe it might try to intensify a little bit more, but more than likely it's going to remain a tropical storm and then weaken very quickly once it makes its way on shore. Tropical storm warnings obviously in effect right now for portions of the Mexican coastline. Cristina, on the other hand, also expected to stay a tropical storm, although it may intensify a little bit further because it has till roughly Thursday before it makes its way onshore, probably going to make landfall in either Guatemala, maybe a slight chance it makes landfall in El Salvador, and maybe if it tries to stay offshore for a little bit longer, it might try to make landfall in Mexico. So definitely some possibilities there, but more than likely it's going to make landfall somewhere along the Central American coastline here, but it's going to be moving very slowly, especially if you can see by these points here, these forecasted points. That's what they are. They're the forecasted points of position. And these dots, if you've been tracking the tropics, especially for the last few years, or if you've been tracking for long enough, you know that these dots here represent 12-hour points. And so the fact that most of these 12-hour points are very close together definitely says this is going to be a slow-moving storm. And obviously, given the fact that this will be a slow-moving storm, probably the biggest impact here for the next few days, even while this is still offshore, but it will be very close to the coastline. We are definitely going to get a lot of rainfall here for the Central American coast, as well as Mexico with Boris over the next several days. And showing you here the GFS forecasted precipitation totals for the next week. And this only goes out to the next week. There's probably even more precipitation that'll happen beyond this. But yeah, take a look at the totals here. Widespread throughout Mexico and Central America. Many areas could see as much as up to a foot, up to half a foot, up to a foot. And some areas potentially even more when it comes to predicted rainfall here. And obviously that'll give way to flooding, flash flooding, mudslides, rivers overtopping if there are any rivers in the area here, and just the general threats that come with flooding. And as I said before, I absolutely do not want to diminish the threat that flooding can cause, especially with these tropical cyclones, especially with these very slow-moving tropical cyclones like Cristina is going to be here. So flooding will be a big threat here over the next several days and something to watch for sure. And let's take a look at the GFS here to see how these storms play out. Obviously, Boris is going to move onshore here by tomorrow, and then Cristina is going to last a little bit longer, then it's going to move onshore as well. And then we are still watching the potential here for the possibility that some of the energy remnants from Cristina might make its way into the Bay of Campeche. And really quickly, going back to the track of Cristina here, you can see that it kind of does follow this northwesterly path here, and especially once it makes landfall in Guatemala, if you kind of trace the track here, it does move on a northwesterly direction to the point that you would assume that its remnants will definitely more than likely end up over the open waters of the Bay of Campeche. And at least looking at the GFS here, by the time we get to, again, the end of this week when that's going to happen, there's definitely some vorticity that is left on the GFS here from Cristina, enough so that maybe there could be something to work with here in the Bay of Campeche. But it is going to be brief. It's going to be a very brief window of opportunity here. It's no longer looking like, especially compared to a few days ago, that this whole gyre was going to lift northward, directly into the central Gulf, like some of the models were showing. It's now mainly looking like some of the energy is going to kind of get picked up and, maybe spread itself out over the Bay of Campeche a little bit. But there's still some vorticity here, and definitely something to work with. And I mean, the GFS does try to consolidate, especially in the last few hours here before whatever low pressure finally moves inland over Mexico. Again, by the end of the week here in the Bay of Campeche, does try to consolidate a little bit. So I'd say we'll still have to watch the Bay of Campeche very closely here. And in general, we're going to have to keep an eye out onto the tropics here very closely over the next several days, as we now have 2 tropical storms to watch. Kind of incredible, but not incredible, or not really, too surprising. It is incredible, but it's not too surprising, especially when you look at the sea surface temperature anomalies in the Pacific. And I've been telling you guys for a while we were going to have an El Nino, a quite significant El Nino, and we are already starting to see that pan out here. I'll show you the Nino 3.4 SST values in a little bit. They are actually getting quite concerning, especially given that it is still June right now, early June, but also in the tropical Pacific here, sea surface temperature anomalies are very warm, especially closer to the Mexican coastline here. Some of these anomalies still as much as 2 to even 3 degrees Celsius above normal. Now, thankfully, Boris and Cristina are a little bit to the south here, away from these extremely warm anomalies, but still, the overall tropical Pacific is very, very warm, and it's going to stay that way, and it's only going to build, especially as this El Nino here continues to build along the equatorial Pacific. And speaking of El Nino, the latest Nino 3.4 daily value is already at 1.5 degrees Celsius, which already means that we are seeing a strong El Nino here on the raw sea surface temperature anomaly daily charts. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that we are already officially in strong El Nino category, in the strong El Nino threshold, because, in general, these sea surface temperature anomalies are averaged kind of on a 3-month time scale. So these anomalies at or above 1.5 degrees Celsius here are going to have to persist for at least the next 3 months, but I think they're probably going to do so. I'll show you here in a little bit. This El Nino pattern is only going to ramp up even further as we get into the next 2 weeks here. So this graph is only going to continue to go up. But it's already incredible that on the daily values, we are already at 1.5 Celsius here. And then on the weekly chart right now, at least according to the Climate Prediction Center, updated as of today, this weekly values chart here updates every Monday. So we got the new release right as it came out. The latest Nino 3.4 value, according to them, is at 0.7 degrees Celsius above normal, and this is averaged as of a week. So not quite strong El Nino, barely not even reaching moderate Nino threshold yet on these weekly departures. But I bet you, especially as these daily departures continue to skyrocket, these weekly departures are definitely going to catch up very quickly. And especially when you see the zonal wind anomalies here forecasted for the next, I'd say probably a week to week and a half, roughly, right? Yeah, a week and a half, since this goes out to 10 days from now. This is the European forecast. And take a look at these westerly winds here forecasted in the Eastern Pacific, and quite the strong values that are also showing up as well here, coming up in about 4 or 5 days. And this persists at least up until June 18th. So for at least the next week to 2 weeks here in June, we're going to have very strong westerly winds in the Pacific. So more warming coming. El Nino is going to continue to strengthen, and I bet you we are probably not done with Pacific activity after Boris and Cristina get themselves out of here. In fact, we will probably just be beginning, as crazy as it might seem. But with that being said, I'm going to end it off for today. Not much else going on beyond that. We'll obviously continue to watch Boris and Cristina to see what they do. But of course, I will continue to keep you updated, not just on YouTube, but also on Twitter as well. So make sure to follow me there at Danilo Evangelista if you haven't already done so. Enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe. Peace, love, and kindness to all. And I will have another update for you tomorrow.